news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room.
Good morning. It's 8 minutes after 8, and this 12th day of April 2023. We get on to the third hour of the Situation Room. It's Eric Latif and CT Muga, and Aukot is away for this week. We have a new guest joining us in the show. For this hour, we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Ekuru Aukot, the party leader of the Third Way Alliance, with regards to the proposed calls for a conversation, a national dialogue. Dr. good morning.
Good morning. First of all, Eric, I think you should not mislead your listeners. It's not national dialogue. They are calling it bipartisan. And we will need to deconstruct what bipartisan means.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. It's bipartisan conversation. You're here because you have previously said that when you hear what they're talking about, you get a sense that this is BBI being introduced through the back door.
Mm-hmm.
You'll tell us about
that.
Mm-hmm. You'll tell us about it. But let's first hear that proverb from Mali.
Mm-hmm. And I brought him more proverbs today.
He did.
An entire book of proverbs.
The good doctor is a man of his word.
Yeah.
We discussed this book the last time he was here, and he said he would bring it. And lo and behold,
the book is here.
The book is here.
What book is it?
This book, Waiting for the Wild Beasts to Vote.
Waiting for the Wild Beasts to Vote.
Yes.
By Amadou Kroma.
Yes. So,
Safi.
you know how long you'll wait for that to happen.
Okay. The proverbs are from Mali.
They're from Mali. Truth is available only to those who have the courage to question what they have been taught.
Truth is available only to those who have the courage to question
what they have been taught.
Yes.
What's your direct interpretation of this?
For me, I think even if we were to contextualize it in the context of our politics, and this is what we're going to try and delve into this morning, there were a lot of election promises that we were told in the 2022 general election. But I think many people believed it to be the truth, but now it's manifesting daily, in my view, as a lie. For example, we were told that we inherited empty coffers, but we can see the largesse, the kind of expenditure that this government is putting Kenyans through, the various appointments, the various constitutional, the disrespect for the violation of the Constitution. So only when you question such actions, then that's when they become truthful. I'm just putting into context of
that's
Kenya.
When you see the truth.
That's when you see the truth. Mm-hmm. That's when the truth comes out. To the extent that when we actually... So the truth here was that we were being lied to.
The truth was that we were being lied to.
Yes, the truth is that we were being lied to, despite the recipe. Because eventually, a deputy president, commonly known as Rigiji, said, you know what? We don't have money. If you want to flock us, our buttocks are ready for flocking.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the truth. The truth is that actually we were lied to at electioneering time.
And then there was...
And therefore, the courage we now must have as Kenyans is to question that which we were told as the truth.
Okay. So a couple of weeks ago, on a Sunday, President William Ruto addressed the nation.
Right.
And this is following the call for nationwide protests by Azimio. Mm-hmm. And he said, there comes a time when it's important not just to keep talking, but to actually just pause and listen. And I'm listening to what is being said, and I think it's important that we all sit somewhere and have a conversation together. And he called then for bipartisan talks being held in Parliament between the Kenya Kwanza side and the Azimio side, so they can thrash out these matters that are being raised by Azimio. And he particularly went into this matter of the IEBC selection panel. We can work out a way in which we can legally have a conversation that can be resolved.
Yeah.
And he says the other issues of the cost of living and all, there are interventions that my administration has put in place, and we can discuss that. Now, since then, we've seen Raila Odinga respond and say, yes, okay, to the calls. We have called off the demonstrations. We are going to have participate in this, although the Azimio side has its own opinion of how the talks are going to take place. Parliament plus experts. Kenya Kwanza says Parliament plus 0. Other Kenyans are coming out to say, but where are we? Where do we fit into this conversation? And then here in comes Dr. Ekuru Aukot and he says, "Aye, in the BBI." Where do you get that from?
Yes, because, Eric, I'm not a guest in this nation and in this country for sure. I've been around and I've also interacted largely with some of this political class and leadership. BBI is already being implemented. There are many signs to how BBI is being implemented. If you look at the deliberate and utter violation of the Kenya Constitution, the Kenya Constitution at Article 130 speaks of the national executive that comprises the president, his deputy, and the cabinet secretaries. And it caps the cabinet at a maximum of 22. Now, the president has actually expanded the executive against the provisions of the Constitution. I think we have, 27 cabinet secretaries appointed. That is already a violation.
How so? Explain.
I mean, I'm talking about the cabinet secretaries who were appointed. And then we have got 43 permanent secretaries.
You're talking about the cabinet secretaries plus the cabinet level appointments.
Yes.
In terms of advisors.
Yes.
And the secretary to the
No,
cabinet.
advisors, I don't count them as part of the cabinet. I'm talking about cabinet secretaries. Okay. Then principal secretaries are 43. The Constitution caps the cabinet at 22. So you must match a cabinet secretary with a principal secretary.
Okay.
Now, over and above that, the president has gone ahead against a court order to appoint 53 chief administrative secretaries. These are animals that don't exist in our constitutional order. He has also created an office called the Chief Cabinet Prime Secretary. Again, another strange dragon that's not in our constitution. So what the president has done, he has actually violated the provisions of Chapter 8, the executive, but also circumvented how you amend the constitution to expand the national executive. That is, you needed to invoke provisions of Article 255, 256, which is parliamentary initiative, and 257, popular initiative. Okay? And you remember, I mean, now let's tie it with BBI. The principle in BBI was that we need to accommodate regional representation. We need to bring Kenyans together. Now, bringing Kenya together in the lingua of this political class in Kenya is picking point men from regions and therefore bringing them into government. And that is what they call simplistically inclusion. That's not inclusion. It's about, because if you look at, for example, the chief administrative secretaries that he has appointed, all of them are failed politicians. All. Not a single technocrat. In fact, point out to me any single technocrat in that list of 53. There's none. So the president has also gone against the will and the letter, the spirit of the constitutional letter of the law.
What is a failed politician? You know, there are people who participated in an election and they did not win the election.
Yes.
There are many others in that list of CASs who did not vie for elective seats.
Yeah, but larger and because
how would you call them failed politicians?
They were his political supporters. And the truth for the matter is, unless you now want to feign blindness, you must be able to see that these are people who are supporting the president full time. Yeah, and you see, and for me, one of the things that...
But that's not a failed politician.
Well, fair enough. I mean, okay. I haven't really even bothered to thrash out but I know largely there are many of them ex-governors, whatever, this and that. They tried to be in Senate, they tried to go to Parliament, they failed. So anyway, be that as it may, it is still very unconstitutional that he now expands the national executive. And the reason I'm going back to TCT's, proverb from Mali, in 2022 we were promised many things. We will not borrow. We will run a lean government. We'll do this and that. But we don't hear that anymore. We don't also hear that, there's a mama mboga or a hustler or a boda who has been appointed into cabinet or into government. Because there are many of them who with the degrees. So that if someone like President William Ruto, with all the intelligence machinery, he could actually investigate and find out if there's actually a Uber guy who drives even with 2 degrees. That's a hustler. And that's a man with qualification or a woman with qualification. I will easily appoint to the cabinet, then I will live to the true promise I gave them that this will be a hustler government. A hustler government cannot go on burning money you do not have. You do not say I'm gonna spend 800 million shillings in buying cars. I mean, as if you didn't have a car in the first place, or as if government did not have cars. How is that a hustler nation? So I think City's proverb sits very well with our political context. And yes, I smell BBI because this idea of bipartisan dialogue inside parliament is already a red herring for me. Why do I say that? Because the issues we are talking about, cost of living, cannot be resolved on a round table or in a boardroom. This requires some serious economic, fiscal policies to be in place. It requires us to fix issues to do with the Financial Act. And if I were to take you back to the idea of a lie, in 2019, the people who are now drumming up support for a reduction of the cost of living were actually in parliament when, for example, VAT on petroleum was actually increased. And that is what drove the cost of living high. So today, Azimio cannot come out clean and say, we were not responsible. Remember, it was during the handshake government that the cost of living actually went up. And I recall Raila Amolo Odinga himself, just several months before the election, defending the government, viciously defending the government. I remember him using the words, wacheni kubweka bweka kama mbwa. Cost of living is not only unique to Kenya. Now that he did not form the government, now he's turning around to say the cost of living, this government is responsible. No, they are all responsible for the situation Kenya is in right now. And furthermore, I don't see any good that will come out of these bipartisan talks inside parliament. Most of MPs I've spoken to will tell you that there is nothing good that can come out of parliament. Parliament has already been compromised. Ruto is busy buying opposition MPs. That's why you see the Jalangos, the Professor Ojendas, and others, being even scared of going back to their hoods.
What is buying?
Well, this is the language they use themselves. They have told me that parliament has been bought. It's been compromised. Last week I was in a show similar to you as with a member of parliament whose name let me not mention. He said, I couldn't forget about anything that came out of parliament. And I say this because, there are three cardinal duties of a member of parliament. To represent the constituencies that actually sent you to parliament. To pass legislation and to oversight government. Yes, if the cost of living is high, Eric City, why have we not seen a single motion being tabled in parliament to address this cost of living? Why have we not seen a statement being issued by, say, the leader of majority or leader of minority on the floor of State House, and let's debate that statement? We don't see that. Instead, parliament wants to meet on this bipartisan. In fact, we should make this, if there is need for this, which personally I'm reluctant to admit there is actually no need of this bipartisan dialogue. If really there has to be, then let's bring it outside parliament. Let's bring it to the people. Let it be multi-partisan. Let's bring all the political parties, because we all participated in the last general election, either as candidates or as people who participated in that voting. So this nonsense of Azimio and by the way, I don't even understand. Last time when I was here, we discussed whether somebody can actually belong to two political parties at the same time. So now we have reduced Kenya into being Azimio and KK. We have reduced Kenya into being Raila and Ruto. So where do the rest of us fit in? And really, if you want to talk about the problems that have really affected this country for the longest time, there is an avalanche of inquiries and findings about what ails Kenya. If it is matters electoral justice or injustice, whichever way you want to look at it, we have the Kriegler report. There is even Waki report on post-election violence that again links to matters election, how we manage our elections. We have got the Akumi report. We have the Ndungu report on matters land, and many, many others. I could go on and on. We have got the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission report, which today are gathering dust. So if KK administration was anything to go by, and if they are really truthful, then let them retable those reports, and because they have identified the problem in our country. I know one thing they will never put on the table is the conduct and character of the leadership we have in this country, because it's a direct betrayal of Chapter 6 of our Constitution.
I want to ask a question. You've said you don't see the need
Yes.
for this dialogue, the
Yes.
bipartisan dialogue. And you say, if there's any need, then let it be outside Parliament. When you say you don't see the need, are you saying that you don't see the reason why the dialogue was called for?
Okay, first of all, so let's deconstruct
Because the reason
Yeah.
the dialogue was called as a result of the agitation by the Azimio side, and the president said, okay, so let me hear you. Let's have a conversation. So are you saying that even the call for demonstration was unjustified?
No. First of all, personally, as a constitutional lawyer, I respect constitutional rights and liberties any time of the day, any minute of the day. Article 37 of the Kenya Constitution guarantees the right to, to picket, to demonstrate, whatever. But it also says peaceably. You must be peaceful when you go on this demonstration and picketing. Now, of course, the character of ODM or Azimio side demonstration has always been violence. And you've seen that. Disruption of the economy, disruption of the very, very economy they want improved. By the time when you instill fear on Mama Mboga or a boda who is not able to use certain routes, you've already sent that man home hungry and his children sleep hungry. So when I look at the agenda by the Azimio side, there's a sweetener. The first one, I think, is A, cost of living, cost of fuel, and all that.
And
but
education.
the 99% of it is about election. Okay, now, the issue of election was closed. Even for you today to say, let's open a server, let's open a ballot box, you'll need a court order. Azimio has not moved the court, and they ought to know this. I see a lot of ignorance in Azimio side. For example, the Court of Appeal decision in the minor Kiai case concluded that what is final result is that vote that is cast at the polling station.
Yeah.
And that is Form 34A, which were fed into the server. Okay? I'm not an IT person, but I did just a quick search. What is this server? A server is basically a computer. It's a storage facility. As simple as that. And when you are given a link to that storage facility, to that computer, you've already accessed the server. So this issue of saying, let's open the server, I don't understand what it is. They're not even explaining. Now, that agenda is more about election. I see a lot of bitterness that we did not win. And I think when I speak to some of the Azimio people, they really, they are embarrassed. They don't understand, how could we have lost this election when we had Uhuru Kenyatta on our side, the government, the outgoing president, we had all the resources. I think they're really wondering. And of course, now it's coming out clear that they did not even have agents. Yeah? And I think they did not even look after their own vote. So the reason I say I smell BBI, because that is a dead issue. The issue on election is a dead issue. I do not see in that agenda relating to election as punishing any IEBC officials who may have committed electoral malpractice. If I saw that, then I will take them very, very seriously. Because if there are irregularities, and remember, it is the same, both sides say that we will go to this election. If we lose, we'll accept. But those who lost, as the Azimio side, moved the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, which is the only place where we can actually determine matters presidential election. And the Supreme Court returned a verdict. And you recall, the judges even asked very tough questions. Please explain this to us. How did this ballot, how was it changed? And they were not able to. Surprise, surprise, thereafter, they come up with a whistleblower, blah, blah, blah. So having been in this country also in 2017, 2018, and having participated in that election, I see all the signs of how another BBI is being choreographed.
I don't understand. What were the tenets of the BBI? What was the focus? What would you say were the pillars that were supposed to support the BBI?
There are about 9 pillars, if you recall.
Okay. So when you say that you see it being resurrected, what exactly is being resurrected?
What is being resurrected are 2 things. An element of BBI, which is really an inclusion of the regional kingpins into government to be accommodated. But I also see an element of another version of the handshake. The handshake is, they have agreed they are not going to call it a handshake. They will call it bipartisan. And if you go back memory lane, City, let's go back memory lane so that Kenyans can see the pattern. 1997, you remember when the phrase was that the Jogo has swallowed the tractor. The cooperation and partnership between the then NDP and KANU, where Raila and his team were agitating outside that KANU is illegitimate, is not in government properly. Then Moi brought them in. And therein, the people's problems were forgotten. Fast forward, 2002, the National Rainbow Coalition government again brought again all these people together. There was an agitation, they came up together, then the NAC government was formed. Again, the talk was about constitution review, constitution making, amend the constitution. In 2005, we went to a referendum. Again, they split. That marriage of convenience collapsed. In 2007, 2008 came in the Nusumkati government. Now, the Nusumkati government, again, was about just addressing the issues. But one of the things that I thank the Nusumkati government for, there was the product of the current new constitution, the 2010 constitution. But after that, hell broke loose again. 2018, we saw the handshake government. Again, it started with the demonstrations, the false hearing in of Raila Odinga, and then eventually let's shake hands. We need to work. Now again, we are seeing the bipartisan dialogue. Before the bipartisan dialogue, there was demonstration. You are an illegitimate government. We will storm State House, blah, blah, blah. So if I look at all these scenarios, except for the 202, one of the geniuses of both Moi, Uhuru Kenyatta, and now Ruto, is to bring on board into government the only person out there, the biggest noisemaker who can actually mobilize the mob and the crowd, Raila Amolo Odinga. And the only way to quieten him is either to do this...
To accommodate him.
To accommodate him is to introduce this language of less dialogue. What are we dialoguing on? On the Kenya Kwanza government, CT, if you truly won the election, and you so believe so you won the election, the Supreme Court even said, yes, you won this election. Why then are you entertaining talks over what? I would like to see KK implement its plan. I want to see KK, reduce the cost of living like they promised. They said in 100 days. Now they moved to 6 months. Now they're saying, give us time. The coffers were empty. But we are also seeing the kind of expenditure that's happening on our very, very eyes. So this is just an attempt to accommodate their laziness in implementing or in capacity to implement that which they promised Kenyans. So they will bring in, because many other people inside there really have no capacity, in my view, to organize a demonstration. They don't have a sycophantic following like Raila has. And so the only way to appease Raila Amolo Odinga is to say, less dialogue. Now you can see the language has changed. We are no longer going to maandamano. We are going to town halls.
Let me ask you this
which
question.
is probably a more elegant way of doing things.
We'll have town halls and then we'll end up at Jacaranda grounds.
Yes.
This is not a town. Let's take a break.
But also before CT comes in, and the other thing that about this dialogue, it's less with a lot of threats. If you don't do this, we'll do that. Now, how do you dialogue with somebody who is threatening you? Plus, I really want to see the agenda. I don't see any agenda other than just election.
Let's take a break then. It's 29 minutes to 9. Dr. Ekuru Aukot is the party leader of the Third Way Alliance. He is here with us in the studio this morning, raising questions about these bipartisan talks that have been proposed and that are going to take place between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza. He says, what I see here is just a return of BBI. City has asked him, what elements of the BBI are these that you see returning? We'll wait to hear the response to this. Showmax.com. Have you logged onto Showmax.com? Are you subscribed to Showmax? If you are, then look out for this brand new show. It's called My Second Family. If you're not subscribed to Showmax, please go to Showmax.com. Look at the various packages that they have. Select the package that you feel that works well for you, because then with Showmax, you get access to unlimited entertainment. A lot of good content, particularly this kind of new content coming from Kenya. Ian.
Maritime tips brought to you by Kenya Maritime Authority. Precautions for boat owners, crew and passengers. Keep a distance of 2 meters between each other. Disinfect life jackets regularly. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces on board the boats and vessels such as steering wheel, safety and guardrails and seats. Provide disposal bins with lids on board boats and vessels. Limit passenger capacity to 50%. Stay home if you have flu-like symptoms. Kenya Maritime Authority for safe and efficient water transport.
Club Kiboko Festival is here. The Standard Group Fraternity is inviting you to the Bonding and Fun event on 29th of April 2023 at the Ulinzi Sports Complex, Langata. You don't want to miss the fun-filled environment where up to 3,000 kids will consume various products and be engaged in edutainment, outdoor activities, concerts, and outdoor gaming experience. Be a part of the Club Kiboko Festival and get value on brand experiential and engagement spaces, gaming stations, an expo area, and mentions. Get your tickets today on Ticket Hub at 500 shillings for kids and 300 shillings for adults. To book your space or get more details, call 0727 201 922 or email hgikandi@standardmedia.co.ke. Club Kiboko Festival. Miss it, miss out.
Ding bang ding, ding ding bang, bang bang bang, ding bang ding, bang bang.
Inaitwa Radio Zaidi ya Radio Maisha, tuko mbele pamoja.
Right, kama ulivyosikia hapo, nitakuwa na Mwananguze kila siku ya Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa ndani ya Radio Maisha kuanzia saa 12 asubuhi mpaka saa 4. Naitwa Solomon Zuli, au sio? Na kuanzia sasa itakuwa ni Zuli na Sugar Boy.
We bring you content for millennials by millennials.
This is where inspiring stories.
My work is mostly inspired by nostalgia.
Achievements.
What I've done so far is just being able to find myself in a point where I am constantly employed, which was a huge dream of mine.
And daring dreams align.
My main goal for this year is to be able to put Kenya on the map.
I am a millennial
on the move.
And this is why, guys, you should not miss Millennial on the Move.
All right, 2049 City. Ask Dr. Ekuru Aukot.
You know, he made a statement, and he said that the one person in this country who has a sycophantic following that can cause the sort of disturbances we saw with the Mandamano Raila Odinga, it's the word sycophant. And I wanted to ask him why he thinks people become sycophants. Well, what is it that leads to sycophancy if indeed the followers are sycophantic? Why do people get to a point where they are, because sycophancy presupposes that you're following this person without logic, without reason, and that all you do is follow. They say you follow, and no thought process beyond following actually accommodated. Why do you think we get to that stage? Why do you think such a thing, if it does exist, why does it exist?
No, I think sycophancy exists, and it's been there, and the sycophants follow the leader they think they believe in. And for me, sycophancy in this country comes because of the nature of our politics. For the longest time, there are leaders who have actually manifested themselves into society, in the eyes nationally, to say that we are from, and they have drummed this support that we are in a region. There's also been a lot of conmanship in our politics, that because of so and so, because of community X taking over power, the rest of us are now being relegated. And I think at the risk of just being more brutal, for the longest time, the people of Luo Nyanza have been made to believe that the Kikuyus are part of their problem. Rift Valley been made to know that Kikuyus are part of their problem. So if you look at, for example, our nature of politics, the mobilization is around tribe, region, personalities that in a way sort of, for lack of a better word, represent that region and that community. And that's why you saw, for example, in the BBI, the idea was that if you accommodate, I think, 5 people in government, we have all been included. So there is an illusion from the general masses that, and people always follow a leader. And whether that leader is truthful or not, people will always follow, whether blindly or logically or whatever the case may be. But the nature of our politics, is tribal city. People will follow the leader they think is speaking a certain word to them. For example, there was a sycophantic following of William Ruto in 2022 when he came up with the narrative, hustler narrative. He was speaking to the real problems, the people with lack of means, people going to bed angry, people waking up in the morning and saying, how do I put food on the table? So the street language, the common lingua on the streets is that we are hustlers. But here we have somebody who's actually speaking our language. So they follow that man illogically. But now they've realized it was all a long con. That but prices will come down in 100 days. In this, now they realize. Now a lot of them are waking up to say, well, I thought we did not have money in our coffers. So how do they spend 800 million just to buy cars? How do they establish an office of a spouse? How do they, these trips they are making? I mean, the president has made, I don't know, trips to about 10 countries since he came into office. That is a huge expenditure. He has expanded the cabinet. So now the hustlers are beginning to see, I think we're being duped. But at that time, they are following this person because he was speaking a language that they want to hear. So sycophants is there. It's not only unique to Kenya. You will say in the United States of America, Donald Trump still has a sycophantic following. Either of racists or those people who are waiting for somebody who can actually speak the language that they've been trying to muffle. But eventually somebody like that comes, the following is there.
You've actually pointed out something that, well, it all doesn't make sense, but it points to what I was alluding to. They speak to a need.
Yes.
And that need represents a reality that these people have. Now, you may have a differing opinion on it, but there it is. Now, we look at the situation that we have in this country and the dialogue and the narratives that keep crisscrossing. A lot of the things you say, well, if you doubt it, all you need to is wake up in Kenya and look and see what's happening, and you can determine whether these things are true or not. However, the reality of the situation we have, in my view, is that a lot of the problems that we talk about, this government had absolutely nothing to do with those problems. Absolutely. They did not bring about the drought.
That's true.
They did not bring about the high cost of fuels and what have you. It's not them who brought it. If you're talking about the war in Ukraine and how it has affected everything else, they didn't bring it. They didn't bring COVID, because a lot of the economic wars we have to do with the recovery from the COVID period, which affected the entire planet.
That's true.
Okay?
That's true.
Now, having established that many of these things were not brought about by them, we then ask ourselves, what is it that they can do and what reality do we have with regards to the economy? Now, unfortunately, we have to go by what you say, the promises they made. Now, those ones, unfortunately, are crumbling with every passing day. You don't need to look too hard. You just need to live in this country, and it becomes obvious that these things are not going to get done. That we've established. Now,
let me correct you, Kidogo.
Yes.
I don't think myself or anybody out there is actually blaming this government for the drought and whatever. By the way, and it's also true that government is whether you did not bring those issues or not, but once you form the government and the issues are still there, we'll still look up to the government of the day.
We do.
For solutions.
Yes, but you see, I didn't introduce the word blame. I was merely presenting it and saying, this is the situation. Blame is a conversation that keeps being brought in as to who do we blame for our problems. And I'm saying, I'm not even talking of blame. I'm just saying this is the situation. This is the reality that we live with. Now, if you want to apportion blame, then ask yourself, how does blame come in? Blame comes in when you say you're going to do something and you don't. Then I have to blame you because you led me to believe that I should have certain expectations, and those expectations have been dashed. But I'm taking it further. Beyond blame, what then do we do? Because we have a situation where now we are being told the discussions we're about to have, this so-called bipartisan. By the way, it's a term that when you talk about with reference to Kenya, is a bit nonsensical. It makes a lot of sense in America where they have two major parties. So bipartisan makes a lot of sense. Bipartisan too. Here, no.
But that's why I'm suggesting.
But bipartisan in parliament makes a lot of sense to me.
No, it does not.
You wrote the constitution,
Yes.
You created a majority and minority. You
Yeah,
actually
but they are not
divided
the
parliament
only
into
ones.
two.
They are not the only ones in parliament. Majorities and minority are not the only ones.
That's
and I agree
true.
with CT.
But the
if it was
president-
in a country like, say, UK, where
you
you have got two dominant political parties, bipartisan makes sense.
Dr. Aukot, if you speak about it strictly, the president was very specific. Let's have a conversation in parliament. And let's have it in a bipartisan approach.
First of all,
that makes a lot of sense.
First of all,
because parliament...
that's a misnomer. President doesn't have to direct parliament to have a conversation or a dialogue. There are already structures within our constitutional order on how parliament operates. President has no business directing parliament to have any dialogue. Members of parliament have got their rules, the rules of engagement. They know how you can bring in a motion, how you can table a statement for debate. So president has no business directing parliament. In fact, that's even a very wrong approach in my view. If the president really wanted to have a very honest dialogue about the issues that Azimio is raising, he'd be better off telling Azimio, let's meet with the people, let's talk with the stakeholders. The stakeholders of this country are not only parliamentarians alone. City, let me come back to the two issues to give you two responses. Don't excuse this government. And I'm not saying we are blaming them for all the problems we're having right now. We're not blaming them for the Ukraine war or whatever is happening. I just gave you one simple example of how the cost of living went up when the VAT on petroleum was included in 2019. So all these people cannot excuse themselves. Moses Kuria, CS Moses Kuria, CS for Trade, Kimani Ichung'wah were members of the Parliamentary Committee on Budget and Appropriation Committee. They passed most of the borrowing. How did we get here? These people were in that committee that actually approved the borrowing and what the reason we have a huge national debt today. They are now running government.
And budget deficits.
Budget deficits and all those things, they were there. So if you want us to apportion blame, then we can apportion to that extent. But let me also now escalate this argument further. President William Ruto and Rigathi Gachagua are not new in government. Whatever problems you want to say Kenyans are facing right now, William Samoei Ruto was a deputy deputy president of this country for 10 years. Now he's the president. So he cannot tell us that he does not know where the problem is. When they came up with a plan and they said we are going to fix this, fix that, my common sense tells me that they ought to have known, or at least they knew where the problem was. And therefore,
that was actually the argument.
Yeah.
That we have taken a deep look into the issues and we have identified the problems.
Yes.
And the plan is a solution.
A solution. Exactly, they say that. So let's not excuse them because it doesn't matter today. And I can see a lot of goal shifting. We have also seen repeatedly Rigijis saying all money was stolen by the handshake government. We emptied it. They are not even telling us, okay, how was this money stolen? Now that you have the instruments of power, at least tell us, even the 35 billion that the control of budget was forced to release, at least tell us where did this money go to. You can actually...
But even that story, Doctor, that story of the control of budget being forced, is this not an independent body? Is this not a body that is protected by law? Is this not a body that has instruments that guarantee that you really can't be shaken? You can be threatened, maybe.
But she confessed herself and said she was coerced. So in my view, she even has no business being in office right now as we speak. She has no business. This is a self-confessed conspirator to commission of a crime. Yeah, they defrauded the people of Kenya 35 billion. So if I was Gachagua and I truly wanted to account for this money, then I will tell this lady, now you have to tell us exactly how this money left the national coffers.
The
and
way
that way we
it.
will nail, and that way we will nail thieves of public money. Yeah, and at least we'll be putting a system where you cannot touch public funds. Over and above that,
And you cannot manipulate independent officers.
Exactly.
Actually, I'm fearful. You know, when I hear such a statement, it's like the Supreme Court coming to tell us that we made this decision because we are coerced. I'd think and say, wait a moment.
Yes.
Then why did we go through all these processes of ring fencing these positions and giving them protection in law?
But CT, it's not rocket science. I hear people talk. I mean, the other day I was listening to David Indy talk about systems. We have not put systems. What are systems without individuals with capability and ability, the capacity to implement those systems? Even if today you elected a cow to be in charge of this country, let's be very honest. You can have the most beautiful...
Do we have systems that can help that cow to govern?
Yeah, if the cow is capable or has ability to implement the systems.
Beyond producing milk.
beyond producing milk. Fair enough. But, City, there's a point I really must bring back
and
to the
eating
table.
grass.
City, but there's another point. On a very serious note
and
now.
Producing cow dung, yes.
Okay, laughter is very good for the soul, I guess. But listen, let's to more serious issues now. Yes, we have inherited. I like the way you have described the context. This is the issues, the global impacts on our economy and all that. Now you're in government. Let me use a simple analogy. I'm going to shop in a supermarket. I only have 150. But then I go and pick things, I fill my tray, with things that probably come up to 1,000. Am I sensible? Because that's exactly what
you can fuliza.
Even if you fuliza, maybe you could have a limit. I don't know. Maybe your fuliza is upwards of
a million shillings.
Yes, a million shillings. It's possible. But in very simple terms, this government came and told us, okay, there are all these issues like the ones we are heavily described, which had an impact really on whether we can actually deliver the promises or not. But then their conduct in the manner in which they are spending worries me. Yesterday I asked a question in another forum. Why does government always rent offices? Why not spend even something like 20-30 billion, purchase buildings and house ministries? Because we are spending a lot of money in these rents. The trips the president is making, enlarging the cabinet. What are the austerity measures, for example? Maybe we should ask that question. Now that we are broke, and we've been told repeatedly we are broke, then what are the austerity measures you have put in place? For me, I will be sympathetic to this government if they demonstrate this is actually how we are trying to cushion you. But I don't see that. I could be wrong. I don't see that. I also live in this country. And I'm thinking where we are going now, CT, we are going the Sri Lanka way. Because Sri Lanka exploded when government was not able to pay their civil servants. People in the financial sector now are complaining, are saying there's so many loan defaulters. Look at the newspaper today, CT. I can see you have newspapers there. Look at the back pages, or the middle pages. You'll see a lot of auctioning of people, the advertisement to auction individuals. And the truth for the matter is nobody has the money to buy those things from those loan defaulters. So the economy is in tatters. So what I would like to see is an explanation. And it should be worried, City, like I am, when the chief economic advisor comes on national television to say is exasperated daily by the wastefulness in government. But even more, he is worried that the wastefulness is deliberate.
That is a self-confession as far as I can hear it.
Yeah.
But I asked the question.
I think that's a truthful man who comes out and says, this is what I'm observing, okay? As an advisor, as somebody whose role is not in executing, is basically advising. I am looking and I'm saying this is what's happening. And I am telling the government, this is what's happening. But then, Ekuru, you also live in this country, okay? You heard what even the former President Uhuru, at some point, even him getting exasperated and asking, Sasa nitafanya nini? He sent officers home, told them, go home for a couple of weeks. These are all procurement officers in government. Action was taken in KRA Those people go, they come back into office, system continues. Like pause, we go home for Christmas, we'll come back. Play, we resume.
You know, if we analyze...
Because it sounds like,
Because you see, Eric,
they are held captive by all these other interests. There's political interest, there's everything, every other interest.
See, at the end of the day, we can say political interest, political intrigues, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with the guy who is in charge of the country. And for me, he needs to crack the whip. And to be honest with you, in this country...
You are assuming that they are capable of cracking the whip in the manner that you're prescribing. And is there anything that we've seen since this new government took over that shows you that capability or the willingness actually exists?
No, I've not seen. Instead, I'm just seeing aspects of trying to please political supporters and all that. And that's why for me, I'm saying, listen, for sometimes I stayed away from TV stations because I thought I've seen
give them time.
Yeah,
you were saying give them time.
Yeah, I said well, give them time. Let's see what's unfolding. But now the situation is getting dire and dire, and I'm not even talking from a macro level. I'm talking about at a micro level, where even your interaction with your villagers, relatives. I mean, people are asking for basic things like I need to me a bonga point so that I can buy food. Sending me 100 bob. I mean, yes. I'm not talking about I know we are discussing at the national level, but I'm telling you, if you descend down and speak to the villagers, you will know the situation is very, very, very bad on the ground.
Dr. You are not comfortable with the bipartisan dialogue.
I'm not.
You're not comfortable with the approach that's been taken. What would you rather see? Because you all acknowledge that there's an issue to be addressed.
I think what I would like to see is some degree of firmness from the government. I see lack of courage in the current leadership of William Ruto. Because if William Ruto was courageous enough, he should not allow himself to be distracted by the threats by Azimio. From 2 points of view. Number one, you won the election, you are declared so as the winner. You are entertaining too much. I think these people are instilling fear in President Ruto. He is increasingly becoming a political slave. Yeah, these people are actually enslaving him. They are threatening him. So he's not able to focus. In my view, I think William Ruto needs to come out firmly and tell the people of Kenya, I won this election. I don't want to be distracted. This is how I'm implementing my plan. Now go a step further and demonstrate to us how you're implementing that plan. I would wish he could immediately put in some austerity measures on how we can make some savings as a country.
Like what, for
I
instance?
would rather even renegotiate our repayment loan, because I see one of the excuses they are using is that we cannot afford to default.
Yeah.
But nothing has stopped you from renegotiating a long-term repayment plan.
Dr.
Yes.
This conversation, it's if we go along with what you're saying, it'll be a false conversation. You know why? Everything that is done within government that involves spending is budgeted for. It's not complicated.
Absolutely.
Believe me.
Yes.
When you have a supplementary budget, it means everything we're talking about, repayment of loans, salaries, all those things, that's what budgets do. They tell you this money is going here. Now, when you budget, we have no option but to assume that all those things are taken into account, because even these debts, they don't spring on you. They are known well in advance, and they're part of the budget. So you come about and tell us that suddenly, because we paid this debt, we don't have money. Because we paid this debt, we cannot pay salaries. And you had a supplementary budget not very long ago. You see, what you're telling us is something far worse than what we are discussing. You're telling us that you are unable to actually manage the government. You are unable to manage the money. You are unable to manage the responsibility that you have. That's what you're telling us. Now, that is far scarier to me than everything else that we're discussing here.
But it's not a figment of my imagination. It's the reality on the ground. I mean, they themselves have come out to say we don't have money. But we can also see the manner in which they're expending money that they do not have. Was there a budget for chief administrative secretaries? Was there a budget for 43 principal secretaries? Was there a budget for 27?
49, actually.
49, eh?
49,
yes. Okay,
yes.
you see? Was there a budget for that? Even in the supplementary budget, it wasn't there. So why do you appoint people? So that's why I'm saying this government ought to be careful and to be able to demonstrate to us that, listen, this is what we inherited.
The president, in his first address to parliament, he said, I'm directing my new cabinet secretary for the National Treasury to cut back expenditure by 300 billion shillings.
Exactly.
Okay? He said it. They claim that it came to pass.
I don't think so.
So what is it that is holding them back from being able to implement austerity? Because you keep talking about austerity.
But we have to see it. We have to see it. And the first place where we have to see austerity measures is in the way government itself behaves. Now, how else will we know that this government is actually employing some austerity measures? For example, we know that they are borrowing about 10 billion every day, but there's no explanation or accountability on how that money is being spent. At the very least, come and tell us this is how we are spending this money. You know, Rigiji has said 35 billion was stolen. At least show us, demonstrate to us, this is how we recovered. We have traced this money to an account X, and we are bringing it back. We are repatriating this money back, wherever it went. We are not seeing that. Instead, we are seeing a lot of rhetorical talk. Now, the country is being chaperoned into this bipartisan dialogue, as if it will be the solution to our problem. It won't be, especially inside Parliament. And parliamentarians themselves have said, actually, Parliament is compromised.
Final question in about a minute. If President William Ruto called you today, because he has your number and you have his, if he called you right now after you finish this show and he told you, Ekuru, kuja tuongee. Ile kitu yako ya punguza mizigo, kuja to discuss.
Oh, yeah. I will meet him.
So you're against BBI, but you're okay for punguza mizigo?
No, because BBI was part of this largesse in government. Punguza mizigo was actually going to reduce the cost of governance. For example, we had said that we do not see a value of 416 members of parliament or representatives because they are gobbling about 38.8 billion Kenya shillings annually. And I drew a parallel that we people in Nairobi, we are about 6 million, we are only given 12 billion for everything, development. But 416 people are taking home 38.8 billion. I've also spoke about how we can simplify our election because our election gobbles billions annually. Punishing thieves of corruption severely. We are going to save under Punguza Mizigo 3.78 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, BBI was going to eat more into our public coffers. So yes, if William Ruto is actually serious, I am more than happy to tell him, you know what, let me even be your foot soldier.
You have the blueprint.
I have the blueprint on how we can fix this country, especially make savings. I'd say that we abolish these nominations. You know, nominated MPs, nominated senators, nominated MCAs, and we had come up with the Ward Development Fund on how we can quickly equalize this country. So yes, we have the blueprint. I mean, we can panel beat it here, kidogo na pale.
By a dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, me, I would rather I go to the people, to be honest with you. I'd rather this conversation becomes national, or now we can actually cut. Because, for example, CAS, in 2 seconds, the CAS position, do you think we really needed them?
Okay. 2 seconds up.
Dr. Ekuru Aukot, leader of the Third Way Alliance political party, has been our guest. Keep it here for more. In the next hour, we talk to the Deputy Secretary General of KOTU.